What's up, booktube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I'm bringing you my March wrap-up. March was kind of good reading month. I read 7 things totaling around 2,500 pages, which compared to my metrics for the last couple of months is really, really solid. It's definitely the best month I've had this year. I think I gave everything 3 to 4 stars as well. I pretty much enjoyed everything I read. There was one book I really needed to get to this month that I didn't. That was an arc for String City, but I'm currently reading it and I will be finishing it up within the next couple of days and we'll be doing a review of it. So not too bad. I also did some reading for the booktube SFF Awards. I think that was like the bulk of what I read. Let's just dive straight into the books. And I will try to make this video not, a half hour long. So the first thing I read was Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crowe by Jessica Townsend. This is the first book in the Morgan Crowe / Nevermore series. I feel like there's like a little confusion about what exactly the title of this series is. Anyways, this was nominated for the booktube SFF Awards last year and its sequel has been nominated this year. So I said I was going to go ahead and read the first one, and if I liked it, continue it. And I liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's a middle grade book about a girl who's cursed and is supposed to die on her 11th birthday, 12th, 11th. I'm almost sure. It's been a month since I read it. 11th birthday, but on that evening, she's whisked away to like a magical hidden free state by an adventurer named Jupiter Jones, who's a member of the Wondrous Society, and he's sponsoring her to become a Wondrous member. This first book is really just about the first year Morgan spends in the Free State, and in specifically the city of Nevermore, and the trials she goes through to try to gain a spot in the entering class in the Wondrous Society. My biggest beef with this is that the pacing was kind of weird and rushed, and because like the book takes place over an entire calendar year, there were big jumps in time, and I felt like obviously Jessica Townsend's trying to create this world, trying to create the situation, trying to set up a lot of stuff for a series. And so we were being introduced to a lot of stuff, but it didn't seem like we got to spend a whole lot of time with each disparate element, and then suddenly we'd be flashing forward like 2 months to the next element. And so that felt a little disjointed. The mystery itself was not a mystery. It's obviously written for middle grade readers, so like it's not the best thing I've ever read. It wasn't like the third act wasn't a shock, and it felt a little too blunt, a little too obvious, even for that age group. It felt overly obvious and blunt, but it was fun to read. I did enjoy Jessica Townsend's writing style. I did enjoy most of the characters. Morgan is not like your typical like plucky, rambunctious, middle grade heroine. She is kind of dour. She likes to be a little emo, and I could appreciate that. This book definitely also seemed to feel like the response to Harry Potter in a few ways. I'm trying to remember. Like, I remember reading it and going like, yeah, this is definitely like a post Harry Potter, because like obviously I think the generation of kids who grew up reading Harry Potter and have become kind of like academic and critical of it while still loving it, like there's plenty of things to criticize about how it's done and like how it's handled. This almost felt like, okay, so like no, that's a terrible, I was gonna say this is like, how Game of Thrones is to Lord of the Rings, this is to Harry Potter, but like it's not that extreme. So I enjoyed it enough that I continued on and I read the next book, which was Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crowe, I believe. I think that's the full title. And I liked this one better. I gave it 4 stars. I feel pretty good about giving it 4 stars. The pacing was a lot smoother in this book, even though it still took place over like basically the course of a school year. But it didn't feel disjointed. It did have like, I think one major time jump over kind of summer, but overall, I felt like we were allowed time to experience all of the events that were happening and the passage of time a lot more in this book. And it wasn't like it was all that much longer. It was like maybe 50 pages longer, but it didn't feel overly long, and it felt a lot better paced. Also, the conclusion, while not like the most revolutionary thing, was definitely a lot more of a like surprise at the end, I guess. Like it was like the first book, the conclusion, you like experience it very early. You like know how it's gonna end really early on because it's so blatant. This one, it's more like you could figure it out, but it wasn't like stamped on page 50 for you. So I enjoyed that a lot more. I liked the characters again. I liked the development of the characters. There's a girl in Morgan's class who is not necessarily very nice. And it's not like she's going to be changed by the charm and sweetness of the protagonist. Like, that this girl is kind of a brat, kind of a bitch, but like they can still be friends, and like this friendship can grow without either of them like kind of compromising who they are as people. And I appreciate that in a kid's book. Like, it's not all like everyone's suddenly like better people through the power of rainbows or something. I don't know. I like the kids feel good and real. I wish there was more with Jupiter. Like Jupiter, who is Morgan's sponsor in the Wonder Society, he is so absent. He's like the absent parent, except he's not her parent. And so I'm hoping we continue to get more of him as the story progresses. He's kind of like the Dumbledore of the series. So I predict that, by about book 5, we'll definitely have more of him. Oh, and obviously I read Wondersmith for the BookTube SFF Awards. After that, I listened to Oversea Understone by Susan Cooper. This was a reread. I read this as a child and loved it. It's kind of stuck in my head as like one of my childhood favorites. So I got the audiobook because I've been really enjoying listening to older middle grade fantasy on audiobook. And this was no disappointment. This was, in vein with a lot of the other stuff that I've been reading, and I quite enjoyed it. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. I did. The narrator was Alex Jennings. He did quite a good job. He was kind of funny to listen to him doing the voices of all the kids, but it was good. It was nostalgic for sure. It wasn't creepy. Like, I remember being creeped out by this book as a kid. It wasn't as an adult. It has some racism in it, I won't lie, especially from like there's two really real standout moments of racism in the book, though I'm sure there are more. One of them being very early on. There's this moment when the kids are acting out this playtime adventure where they're like explorers, and they're like exploring this house where they're staying for vacation. The book is about the 3 siblings and their parents, and they're staying with this man. They call him Uncle Mary, and he was their mother's uncle, though he's not actually related to any of them, and he's rented a house for the summer, and they're all staying with him in this little seaside town. And the kids, while they're on this like exploration playtime, discover like a secret entrance to an attic and an old map, and the old map leads to the King Arthur's Grail. And it's about the kids trying to find the Grail, and nebulous, the dark, people who work for evil, trying to find it before they can. And the exploration into like this like into these savage lands, it was all very like Rudyard Kipling and kind of gross. This book was written in the 60s, and then later on there's a town parade. Everyone's dressing up. One of the villains is dressed in brownface. It's not good. This is a fun adventure story, but I think if I was actually reading it with a kid, I would want to have some dialogues with the child. I don't quite know how to end this because like I'm still nostalgic about the story, for a kid's adventure story, there's still some really fun parts of it. I do want to read the rest of the Dark is Rising series. I've been collecting it over the years because, like I said, this was like a favorite book as a kid, and I never read the rest of the series, and I always wanted to. So, eventually, I'll get around to reading more, and we'll see how the themes develop, and we'll see if these kind of elements are present in later books. I don't know. Then after that, I did read Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna Maguire. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this book because I do want to make a separate video. This was nominated in the novella category of the BookTube SFF Awards, and that is the only reason I picked it up. I've also read Artificial Condition by Martha Weld, which is nominated in that category, and I want to do a discussion about these two books. So I've read the first two. This is the third in the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire, and I don't really like the first two, to be honest. I think I have discussion/review videos of both of the previous novellas, and you can like search my name plus their titles if you're interested. I was not impressed. I think the first two are way overhyped. The second one is my least favorite, and the first one, I think the first 2/3 of it, maybe like the first 2 acts of the first one, Every Hard Doorway, is good, but the third act, especially like the last 2 chapters, completely let that book down. The last chapter like made me hate it, and the same kind of happens in the second book. But overall, I didn't really like the second book. It was very telling. Anyway, I have reviews. So I decided I was not going to read this just on its own, but it was nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards, and since it was short, and since it was available now from my library, I decided to go ahead and get it and be like, okay, one last try, Shauna Maguire. And I actually liked this. I gave it 4 stars. I still feel real positive about this novella, and I'm kind of shocked. It's not changed my mind about the first two. I still think they're overhyped. I still don't think they're good. And frankly, I would suggest don't read them. But you cannot read this one without reading the first one. However, you can totally skip Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which, to be honest, I kind of would. They're short enough that, like, I think you could read Every Heart a Doorway and then this one, and yeah, it wouldn't be a waste of your time because this is actually like a really fun little adventure. It takes place with a bunch of the kids from the first novella. It involves, I can't really talk about the plot because they're like the main point of this plot involves a spoiler about the first one, which is why you have to read the first one before you read this one. But it is an adventure through several different portal worlds, and it's good. And like the last act, the last couple of chapters didn't make me hate it. I do think like the last like couple of pages I was like, ugh, roll my eyes. But for the most part, I thought this was pretty good. Biggest criticism is I think Shauna Maguire is way like, I am all about representation, but I feel like Shauna Maguire's representation of like diverse characters is a bit name droppy. It's like she's trying so hard to be diverse that it's like she's name dropping diversities instead of people, and it feels a little fake. Whereas if she just like chilled out a little bit, kept all of the representations, kept all of the diversity, but just chilled out, pointing a big red finger like, oh look, I've got diversity, it'd be so much better. Anyway, that's my only kind of criticism of it. Did not exceed. I did not see that coming. And then after that, well, these are kind of out of order because like audiobooks, I'm always listening to audiobooks at the same time I'm reading physical things. But I also read Monstrous. It's volume 3 called Haven. Okay, so I had this on hold from my library like long before it got nominated from the BookTube SFF Awards. I read the first one and the second one as they came out, and I'm like a couple months behind reading this. I love the first one. I'm like, okay, the second one's okay. This one was really good. I gave it 4 stars. My only sadness about this one is there's like quite a few character callbacks to the first one in this, and I read the first one in 2017. It's been like 2.5 years since I read the first one. And so like I knew that I had like there were characters where I knew I had read about them before and I just couldn't remember all the details, and that made me a little sad. But you know, what can you do? That's just kind of the nature of these things. It didn't detract from the actual plot, which I enjoyed. It was a fun adventure. This is ooh, how do you even describe this? Fantasy world, lots of different political factions. Our protagonist has this demon monster living inside of her, and she's related to the political factions, and she's enmeshed in this, like the thing is, so this was actually one of my problems, is I could not remember how she was related to all of the other characters, because I know there's like a ton of interconnections between, there's like so many different kingdoms with different leaders, and I know she's like related to a bunch of them in various like blood ways, and I couldn't remember all the details, and it's not like there's a wiki for this. I would still highly recommend this series, especially now that you've got like 3 out. You could like read them in a closer order and be able to follow a lot more of the intricacies, I think, than I necessarily have over the years. The art's beautiful. Let's see if I can get a pretty spread that will actually show up on camera. Okay, we'll do 2. We'll do like here's a city scene. You can see that. The place where most of the story takes place, and then here's another. Oh, it might be kind of funky on the light. Anyway, the art is this sort of Victorian, Japanese, Lovecraftian aesthetic, and it's gorgeous. It's kind of there's some steampunk, magic, old gods. It's good. I liked it. Anyways, I've talked enough about that. I love how it's at the beginning like, this isn't going to be 30 minutes, and I'm already at 24 minutes. Be some editing involved. And of course I turned off my camera and then realized I forgot to talk about the actual last thing I read this month, which was an audiobook of Ship Beyond Time by Heidi Heilig. This is the sequel to The Girl from Everywhere, which I listened to last year. The Girl from Everywhere is actually the first audiobook I listened to and kicked off my now kind of rampant love of audiobooks. So this carries on from where the first book ended. It's like, I don't want to talk about it too much because like there's a bunch of stuff that happens at the end of the first book and it'd be spoilers, but basically the crew goes on another journey through time and space, goes on another journey through time to a kind of fantastical fictional city, and they encounter other navigators, and Nixie struggles with her feelings for various people. Like, I can't really talk about it because it's a sequel. I did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. I think I gave it a 4 stars. It was like a 3.5, 4 stars, because the middle it didn't drag. Like, I wasn't bored, but it wasn't like as interesting as the first book. However, like the last quarter of the novel was really interesting and exciting and emotional, and stuff happened and it was great. So like, I did enjoy myself. I think if you like time travel fantasy novels, it's a really good duology, and I think it's kind of underrated on booktube. I would suggest it, like, especially if you like time travel stuff, but you don't necessarily want to do like sci-fi, hard sci-fi type time travel. I think it's a really good option. Oh, okay. And then the last thing I read, which was quite the shocker to me, Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. So this was nominated for the BookTube Best of Awards last year, and I like read none of the BookTube Best of Awards last year, but even when I made my TBR video, I was like, nah, I'm gonna give this a pass. This is a newish series by Mark Lawrence, and it's about a convent where girls are trained to be assassins. And the second book, Grey Sister, has been nominated for this year's BookTube Best of Awards. So, in the spirit of being open-minded, I was like, I'll give Red Sister a go. If I don't like it, I'll DNF it, and that'll be the end of it. Because while assassins and nuns are 2 tropes that other people really might love, and are keywords that make other people's ears prick, I'm not interested. Like, those are 2 things that I'm just like, nah, pass. And then as I started reading this, it became very apparent that this is also a Bildungsroman. It's a coming of age story, though we don't actually get all the way to the protagonist Nana reaching like adulthood, but still it's conceptually a coming of age story, and presumably the other books are going to follow her as she ages. So the series as a whole is built from it, and that's not something that interests me either. Again, I know a lot of people do like those kinds of stories, but I don't. So basically, I went into this with an open mind, like, surprise me, but no hope, because it's a bunch of tropes I don't like. And you know what? Mark Lawrence surprised me. Solid 4 stars. Can't give it a 5 because it just wasn't fun enough for me. However, man, the writing is really good. The writing, I liked it. Like, he had some really beautiful turns of phrases, especially like the parts that took place when the protagonist is an adult. Like the future parts, which were short, but like those were really beautifully written. And then the bulk of the novel, which follows Nana as she's rescued by the abbess of Sweet Mercy Convent and inducted into, what are they called? The sister, I don't know, I can't remember what they're called. But anyways, she's inducted into this convent school to raise assassins for the Church of the Ancestor, and it follows her in red class. There's 4 classes as you age up, and it follows her through the first 2, or well, like the first one, and then the first year of the second class, grade class. And so those portions were just like, they flowed really well. They never dragged, even though it wasn't necessarily a subject I was interested in. It was like kind of snappy, crisp writing that drew you along. It was interesting. It wasn't overly mysterious or intriguing. Like, there's a lot of mysteries and a lot of unanswered questions, but it wasn't written in a way that I found mysterious or compelling. But it was good, and it was compelling enough to keep reading, and I didn't feel like I was slogging through it. I at no point really wanted to put it down or like read something else. And like, so those are all really high praises for a book that fundamentally I'm not really interested in, if that makes sense. So it surprised me, and it convinced me to keep reading it and to also read the next one. I'm like, I had to tell myself, no, I'm not allowed to read the next one until I read 2 other books, though. like that's how compelling it was. So the story, like I said, follows Nana and her developing relationships with like the other nuns, some various political intrigues happening in this world, and her relationship with her fellow novices, that's what they're called, and her training to be, basically, I think she becomes a Red Sister, which is like the martial order of nuns. There's like martial order, and then there's nuns who are spies, and then there's nuns who deal with magic and the path, and then there's nuns who just worship the ancestor and like keep the tenets of the faith, kind of thing. And this world is really interesting because it reminds me kind of the world in Pern, where it like there's 4 bloods, 4 like races of people who have like their blood disseminates in their descendants, and they each have kind of like, each blood has a different like shtick. So like, one blood, they grow really strong and powerful, and one blood's really fast, and like one blood can do magic, and one blood can touch the path, which is like a deeper form of spiritual magic. It's different than like kind of flashy magics. You like my hand motions to describe all this? And there's like a prophecy about like a savior, a chosen one who'd be a 4 blood, and people think it's this Arabella Jotsis girl, and there's just, yeah, who's inducted into the order at the same time that Nana is, and they're students growing up together. And Nana as a character was really great. She has a lot of rage issues, and she comes from a very, very tiny town, and she's sold from one place to another before the abbess eventually gets her. And she's not very good with people, and she's not very good at making friends, but she wants to make friendships. And I liked watching her character growth. Like, she's a very almost antisocial character at the beginning, And you can see how, as time passes and as she's socialized with children her own age who aren't just afraid of her, how it smooths down some of her rough edges. Not all of them. Like, she's still the same person, but like she integrates better. And there's just a lot of cool stuff. And I thought Arabella's character was really great. She started out as kind of like the bitchy antagonist character, but like there's a lot more going on. And again, there was like a twist in the third act, but it's not a twist. You see it coming. You know it's coming. But still, it was good. It kept me reading, and I'll read the next one. So I've talked about that way too much. That's everything I read in March. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. I'd love to hear if you're picking up any of these for the book because of the booktube Ask Awards as well. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy any of my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter, Goodreads. Though I talk more on Twitter than Goodreads. Anyways, I will have a TBR for April coming soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.